Chapter 3 Proton. Nasa carried Stile across the fields to the forest where the nearest usable fold of the curtain passed. While Hulk remains away, and I am in the other frame, do thou protect the Lady Blue from harm, Stile murmured as she galloped. I have no better friend than thee to do this bidding. The unicorn snorted musically. He hardly needed to tell her. Were they not oath friends? They reached the curtain, where it scintillated faintly in the shadowed glade. I will try to return in a day, Stile said. If I do not, Nasa blew a word note. Hulk. That's right. Send Hulk after me. He knows the frame. He knows the game. Should anything untoward happen to me in Proton Frame. She blasted vehement negation. Her horn could sound quite emphatic on occasion. Oh, I'll look out for myself, he reassured her. And Sheen is my bodyguard there. She has saved me often enough. But in the remote chance that, well, thou canst go and get bread immediately and raise thy foal. Nasa cut him off with a noise note, and Stile let the subject drop. It had been difficult enough getting her to accept the fact of his adept status. She was not about to accept the prospect of his demise. He hoped he would not disappoint her. Stile faced the curtain. Through it, he made out the faint outline of a lighted hall and piles of crates. A person was walking down the hall, so Stile waited until it was clear. Most people had no awareness of the curtain, and there was a tacit agreement among curtain crossers that the ignorance of such people be allowed to remain pristine. Then he hummed an impromptu tune as he undressed and folded his clothes carefully and hid it away in the crotch of a branch. As he stood naked, Nasa shifted into girl form, embraced him, kissed him, and laughed. I am like Proton. Takes more than nakedness to be part of Proton Frame, Stile said gruffly. Thou art full of mischief, unicorn. He disengaged from her and resumed his humming before the curtain. Send me all into that hall, he sing-songed, stepping forward. He felt the tingle as he passed through. He was in the hall, naked, alone. He turned around and faced Nasa, who was faintly visible beyond the curtain. She had shifted back to her natural form. Bye, friend, he called and waved to her. Then he went resolutely back and walked rapidly down the hall. It was strange being bare again, after getting accustomed to the mores of the other frame. Soon the hall intersected a main travel route, where many naked serfs walked swiftly toward their places of employment. He merged with them, becoming largely anonymous. He was smaller than all the men, and most of the women, and some of the children, but he was used to this. He still resented the disparaging glances some serfs cast at him, but reminded himself that a person who made a value judgment of another person solely in consideration of size was in fact advertising his own incompetence to judge. Still, Stile was glad to get out of the public hall and into his private apartment. His handprint keyed open the door. Stile stepped inside. A naked man looked up, frowning. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then the other stood. Sheen did not tell me you would return this hour. I shall retire. One moment, Stile said. He recognized the man as his double, the robot who had filled in for him while he was in the magic frame of Phaze. Without this machine, Stile's absences would become too obvious, and that could make mischief. I have not encountered you before. Does Sheen treat you well? Sheen ignores me, the robot said, except when others are present. This is proper in the circumstances. Yet you are programmed to resemble me in all things. Don't you get bored? A machine of my type does not get bored, unless so directed. Not even when you are put away in the closet? I am deactivated at such times. This bothered Stile, who felt sympathy for all oppressed creatures. If you do feel dissatisfied, please let me know. I'll put in a word for you with the mistress. Thank you for your courtesy, the robot said without emotion. It does not fit my present need. I am a machine. I should retire now. When is Sheen due back? In 4 minutes, 15 seconds from Mark. Yes, retire now. I'll cover for you. The robot, of course, did not assimilate the humor. Robots came in many types and levels, and this one was relatively unsophisticated. It had no consciousness feedback circuits. It walked to the wall, looking completely human. It bothered Stile to realize that this was exactly the way he looked to others. So small and nondescript. The robot opened a panel and stepped into the closet aperture behind. In a moment, it was out of sight and deactivated. Stile was reminded of the golem that had impersonated him, or rather, impersonated his alternate self, the Blue Adept, until he, Stile, arrived on the scene to destroy it. What was the difference, really, between a golem and a humanoid robot? One was activated by magic, the other by science. There were more parallels between those two frames than geographical. Stile sat down at the table the robot had left. A game of cards, solitaire, was laid out. If the robot did not experience boredom, why was it playing cards? Answer: because Stile himself would have done this, if bored, sharpening obscure game skills. The robot probably followed Stile's program of acrobatic exercises too, though it could hardly benefit from these. It was emulating him, so as to improve verisimilitude, the appearance of authenticity. He analyzed the situation of the cards, then resumed play. He was deep in it when the door opened and Sheen appeared. She was beautiful. She was only slightly taller than he, with over-perfect proportions. Breasts slightly larger and firmer and more erect than the computer standard ideal for her size and age. Waist a trifle smaller, abdomen flatter, hips and buttocks fuller, and luxuriantly flowing fair hair. The average man wanted a better than average woman. In fact, he wanted a better than ideal woman. His tastes distorted by centuries of commercialized propaganda that claimed that a woman in perfect health and fitness was somehow less than lovely. Stile's tastes were average, therefore Sheen was far from average. She reminded him moderately of another girl he had known years ago, a woman smaller than himself, a female jockey he had thought he loved. Toon had been her name, and from that encounter on, he had been addicted to music. Yet Sheen, he knew objectively, was actually a prettier and better woman. She had only one flaw, and he was not inclined to dwell on that at the moment. Stile rose and went to her, taking her in his arms. "Oh, is someone here?" she asked, surprised. "No one," he said, bringing her in for a kiss. "Let's make love." "With a robot? Don't be silly." She tried to break free of his embrace, but he only held her more tightly. "It is best with a robot," he assured her. "Oh." She considered momentarily. "All right." Oops, she was going along with it. "All right," he demanded. "Just how far do you go with robots?" "My best friends are robots," she assured him. "Come to the bed." Angry now, Stile let her go, but she was laughing. "You amorous idiot," she exclaimed. "Did you think I didn't know you?" And she flung her arms about him and kissed him with considerably more passion than before. "What gave me away?" Stile asked. "Aside from the differences between man and robot that I, of all people, know?" she inquired mischievously. "Things like body radiation, perspiration, heartbeat, respiration, and the nuances of living reaction." "Aside from those," Stile said, feeling foolish. He should have known he couldn't fool her even a moment. "Your hands are tanned," she said. He looked at them. Sure enough, there was a distinct demarcation where his Phaze clothing terminated, leaving his hands exposed to the strong rays of the outdoor sun. All living areas on Proton were domed, with the sunlight filtered to non-destructive intensity, so that only moderate tanning occurred. And of course, there were no demarcations on the bodies of people who wore no clothing. Not only did this uneven tanning distinguish him from the robot, it distinguished him from the other serfs of Proton. "I'll have to start wearing gloves in Phaze." "No such heroic measures are necessary," she assured him. She brought out some tinted hand lotion and worked it into his hands, converting them to untanned color. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Stile said gratefully. "You'd stay in Phaze the whole time, with that blue lady." "No doubt." "Well, this is another world," she informed him. "I had a piece of you before you even knew she existed. You have a good 6 hours before the first game of the tourney, and I know exactly how to spend it." She did, too. She was as amorous as she was lovely, and she existed only to guard and to please him. It was easy to yield to her. More than easy. Afterward, as they lay on the bed, she inquired, "And how exactly are things in Phaze?" "I killed the golem who was impersonating me, and gave my friend Kurlgeir the werewolf advice on how to regain his standing in his pack." "I know about that. You returned here for the final pre-tourney qualifying game, remember? What did you do on your last trip there?" "The werewolves and the unicorns helped me to establish my identity as the Blue Adept," Stile said, grossly simplifying the matter. "I do magic now, but I have to fight the unicorn herd stallion to preserve Nasa from breeding for a season." "I like Nasa," Sheen said, "but doesn't she get jealous of the Lady Blue?" "No, they are oath friends now. Nasa knows my destiny lives with my own kind." "With the Lady Blue," Sheen said. Stile realized he had carelessly hurt Sheen. "She is not of this world, as you pointed out." "That's what you think. It's a different world, but she's here, too. She can't cross the curtain, can she? So she must have a double on this side." Stile suffered a shock of amazement. That's right. There must be another self of her living here. My ideal woman, all the time, right here in Proton. Then he caught himself. Unideal. "Oh, never mind," Sheen said. "We both know I'm not your kind, however much I might wish to be." "But why did you tell me?" "Nasa helped you reach the lady, didn't she? Can I do less?" There was that. Sheen identified with Nasa and tried to emulate her reactions. "Actually, I can't afford to go looking for her now. And what would I do if I found her?" "I'm sure you'd think of something," Sheen said wryly. "Men usually do." Stile smiled. "Contrary to appearances, there is more than one concern on this male mind. I am fated to love the Lady Blue, though she may not be fated to love me. But how can I love two of her? I really have no business with her Proton alternate." "You don't want to see her?" "I don't dare see her." "My friends can readily locate her for you." "Forget it. It would only complicate my life, and it is already somewhat too complicated for equanimity. How long can I continue functioning in two frames? I feel a bit like a bigamist already, and I'm not even married. You really ought to settle this. He turned on her. Why are you doing this? But he knew why. He had hurt her, and she was expiating the hurt by exploring it to the limit. There was a certain logic in this. There was always logic in what Sheen did. They both knew he could never truly love Sheen or marry her, any more than he could have loved or married Nasa. Sheen would always love him, but could never be more to him than a temporary mistress and a guardian. You're right, she said, her pursuit abated by his pointed question. It is best forgotten. I shall store it in the appropriate memory bank. You don't forget something by remembering it. We have a tourney to win, she reminded him, aptly changing the subject in the manner of her sex. You understand, he cautioned her. I cannot reasonably expect to win the tournament. I'm not at my peak game capacity, and in a large-scale, double elimination competition like this, I can get lost in the crush. But, and if you lose early, your tenure as a Proton Serf ends, and you'll have to stay in Phaze. And I'll never see you again, Sheen said. You have reason to try. We need to find out who has been trying to kill you here, and you can only pursue an effective investigation if you become a citizen. There is that, he agreed. He thought of the anonymous citizen who had had his knees lasered and gotten him washed out as a jockey. The series of events that action had precipitated had paradoxically enriched his life immeasurably, introducing him to the entire frame of Phaze. Yet still an abiding anger smoldered. He had a score to settle with someone, and Sheen was right. It was an incentive to win the tourney if he possibly could, for the winner would be granted the ultimate prize of Proton, citizenship. Runners-up would receive extensions of their tenure and the chance to compete again in a subsequent tourney. So he did have a chance, a good chance because of his game abilities, but the odds of final victory remained substantially against him. He wondered, coincidentally, whether the history the Lady Blue had recently related had any bearing. A snow demon had fired a freeze spell at the Blue Adept, and it had caught the Hinny and damaged her knees. Stile had been lasered in the knees while riding a horse. Was this an example of the parallelism of the two frames? Things did tend to align, one way or another, but sometimes the route was devious. One game at a time, Sheen said. If and when you lose, I'll just have to abide by that. I know you'll try. I'll try, he agreed. They reported on schedule to the game annex. Sheen could not accompany him inside. Only tourney entrants were permitted now. She would go to a spectator annex and tune in to his games on Holo, unless it happened to be one in which a live audience was permitted. She would lend her applause and opinion when feedback opportunity occurred. There was a line at the entrance. There was hardly ever such a crowd, but the tourney came just once a year. 600 serfs had to report at once, and though the game facilities were extensive, this was a glut. When he stepped inside, the game computer interviewed him efficiently. Identity, a voice inquired from a holographic image of the capital letters GC suspended a meter before him at head height. The computer could make any image and any sound emanate from anywhere, but kept it token. Proton was governed by citizens, not by machines, and the smart machine maintained that in memory constantly. Stile, Serf, ladder 35M, rung 5. That gave his name, status, age, sex, and the fact that he had qualified for the tourney by holding the fifth rung of the competitive ladder for his bracket, the minimum entry requirement. He could have been first on his ladder had he gone for it earlier. He was actually one of the best players extant. But all that really counted was qualification. All had equal tourney status. Stile 35M-5. Assigned number 281 for round 1 only. The voice of the game computer said. A decal emerged from a slot. Stile took it and set it against his forehead. Now he was marked, for the purpose of this round, with the number and name, 281 Stile. Proceed to the 276-300 sub-annex and encounter your opposite number. Your game will be announced in due course. Respond immediately or forfeit. Acknowledged, Stile said. The floating GC faded out, and he proceeded to the designated annex. For this round, a number of waiting rooms and hall alcoves had been converted to rendezvous points. After the first few rounds, many of these would revert to their normal uses, as the number of entrants decreased. Already the annex was filling. Each person wore the decal on his or her forehead, all numbers in the range of 276 to 300. Most were naked men and women, some familiar to him, but before Stile could fully orient, a clothed man stepped opposite. "Salutation, opposite number," the man said. Stile was taken aback. This was a citizen, fully garbed in tan trousers, white shirt, jacket, and shoes. But he did bear the number on his forehead, 281, with no name. Citizens were generally anonymous to serfs. Anonymity was a privilege of status that showed more obviously in the clothing that concealed bodily contours. Serfs had no secrets. "Sir," Stile said. "We are all equal, ad hoc," the citizen said. He was handsome and tall, a good decade older than Stile, and as self-assured as all citizens were. "Come, converse in a nook." He put his hand on Stile's elbow and guided him. "Yes, sir." Stile agreed numbly. His first match was against a citizen. Of course, he had known that citizens participated in the tourney. He just had not thought in terms of playing against one himself. On Proton, there were two classes, the citizens and the serfs, the haves and the have-nots. Stile himself was employed by a citizen, as every serf was. No unemployed serf was permitted on the planet beyond a brief grace period, and no employed serf could remain beyond his 20-year tenure, with certain very limited exceptions. This was part of what the tourney was about. The citizen guided him to a bench, then sat down beside him. This alleviated his third of a meter advantage in height, but not his immeasurable advantage in status. "I am popularly known as the Rifleman. Perhaps you have heard of me." Stile suffered a second shock. "The tourney winner, 15 years ago. I watched that game, sir." The Rifleman smiled. "Yes, I was a serf like you. I won my citizenship the hard way. Now the perennial lure of the game brings me back. You never do get it out of your system. Who are you?" "Sir, I am—" "Ah, now I connect. Stile is the designation of one of the top current gamesmen. I had not realized your tenure was expiring." "It had 3 years to go, sir, but I had a problem with my employer." "Ah, I see. So you had to go for double or nothing. Well, this is a pleasure. I've entered other tourneys since my ascent, but the moment I matched with a serf, he would throw it into chance, and 2 or 3 of those in succession washed me out early. It is hard to beat a person unless he thinks he can beat you. I'm sure you will give me an excellent game." "Yes, sir," Stile agreed. "I don't like chance." He didn't like having to play a citizen either, but that could not be said here. Of all the people to encounter this early, a former tourney winner. No wonder the rifleman's opponents in other tourneys. A citizen could enter anything he wanted, of course, being immune to the rules governing serfs, and had avoided honest contests. Chance was at least a 50-50 proposition, instead of a virtually guaranteed loss. It was axiomatic that the poorer players preferred chance, while the better ones disliked it, and the top players wished it would be abolished as a category. Stile had been 20 years old, already an avid follower of tourneys, when the rifleman fought his way up to ultimate victory by shooting 6 target ducks against his opponent's 3. A highly skilled player who had, of course, taken a name reflective of that victory. But that had been a long time back. The man could be out of practice and out of shape, unless he had been practicing privately. Yet why should a citizen bother? He had nothing to win in the tourney. A citizen, almost by definition, had everything: fabulous wealth, power, and prestige. If a citizen saw an attractive serf girl, he could hire her and use her and fire her, all within the hour. It would not even occur to her to protest. A citizen could have a household of humanoid robots, virtually indistinguishable from living people, until one got to know them, which did not take long, to serve his every need. The finest creature comforts of the galaxy were his, and the most exotic entertainments. Small wonder that many citizens grew indolent and fat. "I can virtually read your thoughts," the citizen said, "and I will answer them. I am not in the shape I was when I won, but I have practiced somewhat and remain reasonably formidable. Of course, I lack motive now. Victory will not benefit me, and defeat will not harm me. Yet it would be satisfying to win it again." Stile was spared the awkwardness of answering by the game computer's introductory announcement. "Attention all entrants. The tourney roster is now complete. 400 citizens, 600 serfs, and 24 aliens. Pairing for individual matches is random each round. The tourney is double elimination. Only entrants with 2 losses are barred from further competition. Serfs among the final 64 survivors will receive 1-year extension of tenure. Those proceeding beyond that level will receive commensurately greater rewards. The tourney winner will be granted Proton citizenship. Judging of all matches in the objective sphere is by computer. Subjective judging is by tabulated audience response. Special cases by panels of experts. Bonus awards will be granted for exceptional games. Malingerers will forfeit. There was a momentary pause as the computer shifted from general to specific. Now it would be addressing the annexes individually. Game pair 276, report to grid. Hastily, 2 serfs rose, a man and a woman, and walked to the grid set up in the center of the room. They began the routine of game selection. "Ah, this is like old times," the rifleman said appreciatively. "Yes, sir," Stile agreed. He would have liked to follow the first couple's progress, but of course he could not ignore the citizen. "Not old to me, sir." "Contemporary times for you, of course," the citizen said. "I have followed your progress intermittently. You have played some excellent games. Perhaps I misremember. Don't you happen also to be an excellent equestrian?" "I was a winning jockey, yes, sir," Stile agreed. "Ah, now it comes back. You were lasered, anonymously." "Through the knees, yes, sir." "That had to be the action of a citizen." "Yes, sir." "Citizens are a law unto themselves." The rifleman smiled. "Don't forget, I was a serf for 19 years and a citizen only 15. My fundamental values are those of the serf. However, I doubt that even most birthright citizens would approve such vandalism. There are licit and illicit ways to do business, and no citizen should need to resort to the illicit. A rogue citizen could be a menace to other citizens, and therefore should be dealt with firmly for a practical as well as legal reason. Yes, sir. As you know, I am in this tourney merely for titillation. I now perceive a way to increase that interest. Allow me to proffer this wage. If you overmatch me in this round, I shall as consequence make an investigation into the matter of your lasering and report to you before you depart the planet. Agreed? No serf could lightly say no to any citizen, and Stile had no reason to demur. He wanted very much to know the identity of his enemy, yet he hesitated. Sir, what would be my consequence if you defeat me? The rifleman stroked his angular, beardless chin. Ah, there is that. The stakes must equate. Yet, what can a serf offer a citizen? Have you any personal assets? Sir, no serf has. The citizen waggled a finger at him admonishingly, smiling, and Stile suddenly found himself liking this expressive man. No serf could afford to like a citizen, of course. They were virtually in different worlds. Still, Stile was moved. Of course a serf has no material assets, the rifleman said, but serfs often do have information that citizens are not necessarily aware of. Since what I offer you is information, perhaps you could offer me information too. Stile considered. As it happened, he did have news that should interest a citizen, but he was honor-bound not to impart it. He happened to know that a number of the most sophisticated service robots were self-willed, acting on their own initiative, possessing self-awareness and ambition. Theoretically, there could eventually be a machine revolt, but he had sworn not to betray the interests of these machines, so long as they did not betray the welfare of Planet Proton, and his word was absolute. He could not put that information on the line. I regret I cannot, sir. The citizen shrugged. Too bad. The wager would have added luster to the competition. As though the future of a serf's life were not luster enough. But of course, the citizen was thinking only of himself. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I would have liked to make that wager had I a stake to post. Are you not aware you could make the wager and renege if you lose? You really don't have much to lose. Stile, under tension of the tourney, was suddenly angry. That's reprehensible! Then belatedly, Sir? Ah, you are an honest man. I thought as much. I like that. Most top gamesmen do value integrity. Stile was spared further conversation by the interjection of the computer. Game pair 281, report to grid. The rifleman stood. That's us. Good luck, Stile. He proffered his hand. Stile, amazed, accepted it. He had never heard of a citizen shaking hands with a serf. This was an extension of courtesy that paralleled that of the herd stallion and Phaze, the disciplined encounter of respected opponents. Phaze! Suddenly, Stile realized what he had to offer. The knowledge of the existence of the alternate frame. The information might do the citizens no good, since most people could not perceive the curtain between frames, let alone cross it, but it would surely be of interest to the man. There was no absolute prohibition about spreading the word, though Stile preferred not to. But if he won the game, he wouldn't have to. This seemed to be an acceptable risk. Sir, Stile said quickly, I do have information. I just remembered. I believe it would interest. Then it is a bargain, the citizen said, squeezing Stile's hand. Yes, sir. Only I hope you will not share the information with others if... Agreed. This is a private wager and a private matter between us, either way. Yes, sir. Second call for game pair 281, the computer announced. Appear at the grid within 10 seconds or both forfeit.
You bucket of bolts, the rifleman snapped. Whom do you suppose you are addressing?
A lens swung about to fix on the citizen. The response was instant. Abject apologies, sir. Time limit is waived. The rifleman's gaze swept across the silent room.
You may laugh now.
The remaining serfs burst into laughter. Rank hath its privileges, the rifleman said. He put his hand on Stile's elbow, guiding him to the grid. This was a public mark of favor that awed the serfs present, Stile included. This citizen had been friendly and reasonably solicitous throughout, but now he was being so when all eyes were upon him.
You lout,
another citizen said, laughing.
Now we'll all have to show favor to our serfs.
What is Proton coming to? A third citizen inquired. This one was a woman, elaborately gowned and coined, with sparkling sapphires on her wrists and ankles and a nugget of protonite on her forehead, reminding Stile of Nesa's snubhorn in her girl form. Parallelism again, perhaps. This citizen, too, was smiling, seeming almost like a person. It occurred to Stile that even citizens might get bored with their routine existences and appreciate comic relief on rare occasions. The tourney was a great equalizer. Now he faced the rifleman, the grid unit between them. This was a column inset with panels on opposite sides. The weight of the two men beside it caused the panels to illuminate. Stiles showed 4 categories across the top. 1. Physical. 2. Mental. 3. Chance. 4. Arts. 4 more were down the side. A. Naked. B. Tool. C. Machine. D. Animal. The letter facet was highlighted. Stile had to select from the letters. He experienced the usual pre-game tension, made worse by the fact that this was no routine game, but a round for the tourney, and made worse yet by the fact that his opponent was a citizen. What column would the rifleman choose? Physical or mental, surely. He was neither a gambler nor an artist, and he wanted a good game. He would want to get into 1B or 1C, tool or machine-assisted physical games like tennis or shooting, where his major expertise lay, or into 2B, where he might get it into chess. He had won a tourney game dramatically in chess. Stile remembered now, on his way up. In 15 years, he had probably improved his game. It was necessary to stay clear of this. Stile could play chess well himself, but he had not had 15 idle years to practice. He was up against someone who really could play the game. This could be the toughest opponent he would face in the entire tourney. A good game that he lost in a contest was no good. He needed a likely winner. His only real course seemed to be animal. Then he could get into horse racing or lion taming. His knees were weak, but this only became acute when he flexed them completely. He could do ordinary riding better than anyone he knew, and remained pretty good at trick riding. His smaller weight would give him an advantage, for the tourney made no allowances for size or sex. All games were unhandicapped. And he liked animals, while the rifleman, an expert hunter, probably did not have as close rapport. Yes, Stile touched D. Immediately a new grid showed. 1D. Physical/animal. The rifleman had chosen as expected. Now the top line was 1. Separate, 2. Interactive, 3. Combat, 4. Cooperative. And the sideline was A. Flat, B. Variable, C. Discontinuity, D. Liquid. Stile had the letters again, which was fine. Horse racing was on a flat surface, and he had control of the surfaces. He did not want to get involved with trained sharks or squid wrestling in the liquid medium, and feared the rifleman might be experienced in falconing in discontinuity, i.e., air. Mountain rodeo would be alright in the variable surface. Stile had bulldogged mountain goats before, but that category also included python tug-of-war in trees, and Stile did not care for that. So we stuck with A flat. The rifleman selected 2 interactive, so they were in box 2A. No horse racing, but there could be 2-horse polo or... The new grid was upon them. 9 squares to be filled in by turns. Lists of games and animals appeared. The rifleman met Stile's gaze over the column. "Take it," he said, smiling. He was giving Stile the advantage of first selection, rather than requiring the game computer to designate the turn randomly. Such minor courtesies were permitted. They facilitated the selection process. "Thank you, sir." Stile designated polo/horse in the center box. The citizen put baseball/android in the right upper box. Oh no. Stile had not considered that androids counted as animals for game purposes. Baseball was played by modified 12th century rules. 20th century rules. 9 players per team. It was a ball game, but there was some overlap in categories. Ball games could appear in several sections of the master grid. This was an animal-assisted ball game, as was polo. The difference was, there were a number of animals here, not used as steeds, but as actual players. Obviously, the rifleman was expert at this sort of game, while Stile was only fair. He had walked into a trap. Sure enough, while Stile filled in other individual animal contests, the rifleman filled in android team games: soccer, basketball, football, and when they played the grid, the citizen won. Football/android. Disaster. Stile had not played team football in a long time. He could pass, kick, and catch a football, but an hour-long session with 20 bruisingly huge androids? What a horror! There was no chance now to brush up on the antique Earth planet Americana the rifleman evidently liked. Stile had to play immediately or forfeit. The citizen did not bother to ask him to concede, knowing he would not. For better or worse, this had to be fought out on the field. They adjourned to the bowl stadium. It was sparsely attended by spectators, since there were several hundred games in progress and surf interest was divided. However, a number began to file in as the news of a citizen surf android match spread. It was not that serfs were interested in Stile at this point. They merely hoped to see a citizen get knocked about a little with impunity. In the interest of economy of time and efficient use of facilities, this game will be abbreviated to 30 minutes playing time without interruption, the game computer announced. Each party will select 20 animal players, from which a continuous playing roster of 10 will be maintained. Substitutions are limited to 1 per team per play, performed between plays. Proceed. The computer was certainly moving it along. And no wonder, for a second playing field was already being utilized, and the remaining 2 would surely be in use before Stile's game finished. They reviewed the androids. The artificial men stood in a line, each hulking and sexless and stupid, but well-muscled. Each carried a placard labeling its specialty: fullback, halfback, quarterback, and an array of offensive and defensive linemen. The capability of each was set within a standard tolerance. An android could perform exactly what it was supposed to do, no more and no less. Thus, the outcome of the game would be determined by the management and strategy and participation of the 2 human players, not the skill of the androids. The largest imponderable was that of human skill, for this was not a remote control game. The androids were there merely to assist the real players, who could accompany any position on their teams, but had to participate continuously. A good contestant would enable his team to prevail. A bad one would drag his team down to defeat. Stile feared that the rifleman would prove to be good, while Stile himself, partly because of his size, would be less than good. The rifleman selected 4 pass receivers and a solid offensive line. He was going for an aerial offense, without doubt. Stile chose pass receivers too, and a passing quarterback, then concentrated on his defensive line. He had to hope for a stalled game and errors. As he saw it, defense was the refuge of incompetence, and that was apt to be him. He dreaded this game. It began. Chance gave Stile's team first possession of the ball. His animals were in white, the rifleman's in black. The opposing team lined up like faceless demons from the frame of Phaze, darkly formidable. They swept forward, kicking the ball ahead, converging on its locale as it landed. Stile's receiver android had no chance. He was down on the 10-yard line. Yards, Stile thought. This was one of the few places where the old system of measurements prevailed on Planet Proton, because of the vintage and origin of this particular game. It was easiest to think of them as scant meters. Now the onus was on him to devise a strategy of play that would bring the football down the field and across the opposing goal line. Stile had a hunch this would not be easy. He assigned himself to be a pass receiver and scheduled the play for his runner. That should keep Stile himself from getting crushed under a pile of android meat. Of course, he knew the androids were programmed to be very careful of human beings. Still, a tackle was a tackle, and that could be bruising. He was thoroughly padded in his white playing suit, of course, but he knew accidents could happen. The play proceeded. The pass receivers dodged the opposing linemen and moved out on their patterns. Stile got downfield and cut back as if to receive the ball, and found himself thoroughly blocked off by the android pass defender. Catch the ball? He could not even see it. The only way he could hope to get it, had it been thrown to him, was if it passed between the animal's legs. Fortunately, he knew no pass was coming. Stile's runner bowled into the line, making 1 yard before disappearing into the pileup. That, obviously, was not the way to go. Still, this first drive was mainly to feel his way. The nuances were already coming back to him, and he was getting a feel for the performance tolerances of the androids. He should be able to devise good strategy in due course. Next play, he tried a reverse end run. He lost a yard. But he was watching the black team's responses. The androids, of course, lacked imagination. A really novel play would fool them, and perhaps enable his team to make a big gain or even score. On the third play, he tried a screen pass to one of his receivers. The pass was complete, but the receiver advanced only to the line of scrimmage before getting dumped. No breakthrough here. 4th down and time to kick the ball downfield. Stile signaled his kicker to come in, and realized belatedly that he had selected no kicker. None of his animals specialized in any kind of kick, and therefore could not do it. If he had his quarterback make the attempt, the job would surely be bungled, and the other team would recover the ball quite near the goal line. Yet if he did not... A whistle blew. The referee penalizing his team for delay of game. 5 yards. He had to kick it away. No help for it. Stile would have to kick it himself. He would not have the booming power of an android, and he dreaded the thought of getting buried under a mound of tackling animals. But at least he could accomplish something. If he got the kickoff promptly, he might get away without being bashed. No time to debate with himself. He called the play, assigning the kick to himself. The teams lined up, the ball was snapped, and the enormous black line converged on Stile like a smashing stone wave. Stile stepped forward quickly and punted. Distracted by the looming lineman, he dropped the ball almost to the ground before his toe caught it. The ball shot forward, barely clearing the animals, and made a low arch downfield, angling out of bounds just shy of the 50-yard line. Not bad, all things considered. He had gained about 40 yards. He had been lucky. Had the black androids had the wit to expect an incompetent punt, they might have blocked it or caught it before it went out, and had an excellent run back. Luck, however, seldom played consistent favorites. Stile had to do better, or the first bad break would put him behind. Now, it was the rifleman's turn on offense. The citizen had stayed back during the prior plays, keeping himself out of mischief. Now, he made his first substitution, bringing in one of his pass receivers. Stile exchanged one of his receivers for a pass defender. The first plays would probably be awkward since most of Stile's players were offensive and most of the rifleman's players were defensive. But the longer the drive continued, the more qualified players could be brought in, at the rate of one per play. Of course, the offensive and defensive lines were fairly similar, for game purposes, so the exchange of as few as 3 backfield players could transform a team. All the same, Stile hoped the drive did not continue long. The rifleman assumed the position of quarterback. His animals lined up. The play commenced. Stile's line charged in, but the rifleman acted with poise, making a neat, short, bullet-like pass to his receiver on the sideline. It was complete. The pass had been too accurately thrown for the receiver to miss, too swift for the defender to interfere with. The citizen had a net gain of 8 yards. The rifleman, now Stile appreciated how this applied to football too. The citizen was a superior player of this arcane game, better than an android passer. Therefore, he had a superior team, while Stile had an indifferent team. Stile substituted in another pass defender, but the citizen brought in another receiver. Stile could not double cover. Those passes were going to be trouble. They were. The rifleman marched his team relentlessly downfield. Not every pass connected, and not every play was a pass. But with 4 tries to earn each first down, the offensive team had no trouble. All too soon, the rifleman scored. Then the rifleman substituted in his own place kicker and let him make the extra point. The score was 7-0, the rifleman's advantage. Complete team substitutions were permitted after a touchdown. It was a new game, with Stile receiving again, except that now he was in the hole. 5 minutes of playing time had elapsed. Stile's team received the ball and attempted a run back. His animal got nowhere. Stile had his first down on the 12-yard line. It was time to get clever. If he could fool the defenders and break an android free, he might score on a single play. But this could be risky. He set up the play. A fake run to the right, and a massive surge to the left, with every android lineman moving across to protect the runner. The result was a monstrous tangle as stupid animals got in each other's way. His runner crashed into his own pileup, getting nowhere, and the referee imposed a 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness, holding, and offensive interference. Half the distance to Stile's goal line. Second down, long yardage from the 6-yard line. So much for innovation. Stile tried to complete another pass, this time to himself. Maybe the rifleman wouldn't expect him to expose himself that way, and the surprise would work. A long bomb, trying for the moons, double or nothing. The play commenced. Stile ducked through the line and charged straight downfield. The rifleman cut across to guard him. Together they turned at the 50-yard line, and Stile cut back to the appointed spot to receive the pass. And the rifleman cut in front of him and intercepted it while it remained too high in the air for Stile to reach. "Sorry about that, friend," the citizen said as Stile hastily tackled him and the whistle blew to end the play. "Height has its advantages." It certainly did. Stile had lost the ball again without scoring. He heard the roar of reaction and applause from the filling audience section of the stadium. The rifleman had clearly made a good play. Now Stile would have to defend again against the devastating passing attack of his opponent. He was not disappointed. Methodically, the rifleman moved the ball down the field until he scored again. This time, he passed for the extra points, and made them. The score was 15-0. The first half of the game was finished, 15 minutes of playing time. Stile had tried every device he could think of to stop his opponent from scoring, and had only managed to slow the rate of advance and use up time. The citizen had averaged a point per minute, even so. Stile had to move, and move well in the second half, or rapidly see the game put out of reach. He needed a dramatic, original system of defense and offense. But what could he do? Surprise first. What could he do that really would surprise his opponent, while staying within the clumsy rules of this game? He couldn't run or pass or kick the ball away. The kick. It was possible to score on the kick. Field goals, they were called, worth 3 points each. Except that he had no kicker other than himself. That was only slightly better than nothing, considering his near bungle of his first attempt to punt. The moment he set up for a place kick instead of a punt, those black armored animals would be upon him. Even if he got the kickoff, even if he somehow scored, he would wind up crushed at the bottom of the pile of meat. There was not any great future in that. If by some fluke he scored several field goals, enough to win, he would still be so battered he would be at a serious disadvantage in other games of the tourney. It would really be better to forfeit this one. It took 2 losses to eliminate an entrant, so he could afford that gesture. No, he was not about to forfeit anything. If he lost, it would only be because he had been fairly beaten. Still, the lack seemed to be his best chance. A surprise punt on first or second down, catching the rifleman with his guard down. Then an attempt to force an error, an interception, or a fumble. Playing for the breaks. It would take nerve and luck and determination, but it was a chance. Stile's team received the kickoff. This time the ball bounced into the end zone and was brought out to his 20-yard line for play. Stile called for the punt, after a fake pass. His quarterback would simply fade back and hand the ball to Stile, then serve as interference to the others while Stile got the kickoff. It worked. Stile got a beautiful, for him, punt off, escaping unscathed himself. The ball was low and fast, skimming over the heads of the animals, bouncing and rolling rapidly onward. No one was near it. The rifleman, playing the backfield, was first to reach the ball. But the thing was still hopping crazily about, the way an unround and pointed ball was apt to do, as if it were a faithful representative of its crazy period of history, and it bounced off the citizen's knee. Now, according to the peculiarities of this sport, it was a live ball, and Stile's onrushing animals had the limited wit to pounce on it. There was a monstrous pileup, and Stile's team recovered the football on the 30-yard line of black. A 50-yard gain. "Nicely played," the rifleman said, smiling. "I was beginning to fear the game would be unconscionably dull." "No tourney game is dull," Stile said. "Sir." Now he had the ball in good field position. But could he seize the opportunity to score? Stile still doubted it. He simply did not have the ability to advance the ball consistently, so he would have to attempt to score from this range. That meant a 40-yard field goal. No, Stile doubted he had the power or accuracy for that. He would merely be throwing the ball away, unless he could get closer to the goal. His androids evidently couldn't do that, and Stile himself was too small to carry it. The pass interception had shown that. This was one game where no advantage could be achieved from small size. Or could it? These android brutes were accustomed to dealing with creatures their own size, and were slow to adjust. An agile, acrobatic man his size, why not show them some of the tricks he could do? Stile was small, but no weakling, and the androids were programmed not to hurt real people. He just might turn that into an advantage. In the huddle, he had specific instructions for his center. You will hike the ball to me. Make sure you get it to me, for I am smaller than your regular quarterback. Then charge forward straddle-legged. I clarify. Hike the ball, then block forward and up, your feet spread wide. Do you understand? Dully, the android nodded. Stile hoped the creature would follow orders literally. These androids were the match of real people, physically, but science had not developed their brains to work as well as the humankind. Androids cast in petite female forms were said to be quite popular with some men, who considered their lack of wit to be an asset. Specialized androids were excellent for other purposes, such as sewer cleaning. It just happened that in this game, Stile had to push to the intellectual limit of the type. In a real game of football, as played on Earth centuries ago, such an android would have been fully competent. This was not that situation. The creature did as ordered. Stile took the ball, ducked down, and charged forward between the animal's spread legs. The slow-witted opposing androids did not realize what had happened. They continued to charge forward, looking for a ball carrier to tackle. Stile scooted ahead 5, 10, and finally 15 yards before the rifleman himself brought him down. Beautiful play, the citizen said, as they bounced together on the turf, their light armor absorbing most of the shock of impact. With a 15-point lead, he could afford to be generous. But the growing stadium audience also cheered. Stile had his first down on the 15-yard line, but he knew better than to try the same stunt again. At any rate, he was now in field goal range for his kicking ability, except that he still did not relish getting crushed in the blitz that would converge on the place kicker. Then he dredged from his memory an alternative: the drop kick. Instead of having the ball held in place by another player for the kick, the kicker simply dropped it to the ground and kicked it on the bounce. A drop kick, unlike a punt, was a scoring kick. Its disadvantage was that it was less reliable than a place kick, since the bounce could go wrong. Its advantage was that it could be done on extremely short notice. Short enough, perhaps, to surprise the androids, and enable Stile to complete it before getting tackled and buried. He decided to try it. He took the ball as quarterback, faded back a few yards, then dropped it for the kick. The ball bounded up, and the androids ceased their charge, realizing that this differed from a punt. Stile watched with gratification as the football arced between the goalposts. It was wobbly and skewed, but within tolerance. The referee signaled the score. 3 points. "The drop kick!" the rifleman exclaimed. "I haven't seen one of those in years! Magnificent!" He seemed more pleased about it than Stile was. But now it was Stile's turn to kick off to the rifleman. He decided to gamble again. "Do you know the onside kick?" he asked his teammates. Blank stares were returned. Good. The animals had not been programmed for this nuance. Probably the other team's androids would not know it either, so could reasonably be expected to flub it. The rifleman would know it, but Stile intended to kick the ball away from him. He tried it, and it worked. Stile's team had possession of the football at midfield. "Oh, marvelous!" the rifleman exclaimed ecstatically. Back in the huddle, "Number 1 will field the ball," Stile told the animals, referring to the rifleman's shirt designation. "Charge him. Box him in, but do not tackle him. I will tackle him." Uncomprehending, The androids agreed. Stile punted on first down. This time he had the feel of it and hung the ball up high, giving his players time to get down to it before it landed. The rifleman, alert to this play, caught the ball himself, calling his own players in around him. Thus the two groups formed in a rough circle. Stile's animals trying to get past the rifleman's animals without actually contacting the rifleman. Perplexed by this seeming diffidence, the citizens started to run with the ball. That was when Stile shot between two of his own players, took a tremendous leap, and tackled the rifleman by the right arm where the football was tucked. He made no bruising body contact, for that would have brought a penalty call, but yanked hard on that arm. As the two twisted to the ground, the ball passed from the citizen's grasp to Stile's. Stile was, of course, adept at wresting control of objects from others. He had specialized in this maneuver for other types of games. Once again, his team had possession of the ball. "Lovely," the rifleman said, with slightly less enthusiasm than before. The ball was now just inside the 20-yard line. Stile drop-kicked another field goal. Now he had 6 points, and 11 minutes remained in the game. He knew he would not get away with another onside kick. The rifleman would already have alerted his team to that. This time, Stile would have to play it straight and hope to stop the citizens' devastating drive. Stile kicked it deep, and it went satisfyingly far before being fielded by a black android. Stile's androids were alert to this routine situation, and they brought the carrier down on the 20-yard line. Now, Stile had to stifle the passing attack. He decided to concentrate on rushing the passer and hoping for an interception. He himself would cover one of the rifleman's receivers, while double covering the other with androids. This seemed to be effective. The rifleman faded back for his pass, did not like the situation, but did not want to run or get tackled. So he overthrew the ball, voiding any chance for an interception. According to the quaint conventions for this sport, all parties knew exactly what he was doing, and it mandated a penalty for deliberate grounding, but none was called. Because of deliberately grounding of the ball was done with discretion, it was presumed to be a throwing error instead of what it obviously was. Presumably, this sort of thing added luster to the game. On the second down, the rifleman tried a pass to the double-covered receiver, but two androids were better than one, and again it went incomplete. Good. One more such failure, and he'd have to turn the ball over on the kick. Stile was at last managing to stifle the citizens' passing attack. On third down, the rifleman rifled the ball directly to the receiver Stile was covering. He aimed it high to be out of Stile's reach, but reckoned without Stile's acrobatic ability. Stile leaped high to intercept it, and was banged aside by the receiver, who had not realized what he was going to do. No android would have leaped like that. A referee's flag went down. The penalty was offensive pass interference. Stile's team had the ball again. This time, the rifleman's congratulation was definitely perfunctory. The ball was on the black 35-yard line. Time remaining was 9 minutes. Those incomplete passes had expended very little time. Still, Stile was getting nervous. He really needed to break loose and score a touchdown. "Number 81, can you handle a lateral?" he asked. "Oh?" the animal agreed after a brief pause for thought. "Then follow me and be ready." Stile turned to a lineman. "When the ball is hiked, you turn, pick me up, and heave me over the black line." He seemed to remember an ancient penalty for such a trick, but it was not part of the game rules. "Duh?" the android asked. The concept was too novel for his intellectual capacity. Stile repeated his instructions, making sure the animal understood what to do, if not why. When the ball was hiked, Stile tucked it into his elbow and stepped into his lineman's grasp. The android hurled him up and over. Stile had been given such a lift in the course of gymnastic stunts and was pretty much at home in the air. He flipped, rolled off a lineman's back, landed neatly on his feet, and charged forward toward the goal line. This time, however, the rifleman had a couple of guards in the backfield, and they intercepted Stile before he had gone more than 10 yards. Now, Stile lateraled to number 81, who was right where he was supposed to be. What these creatures did? They did well. The android caught the ball and bowled ahead for 8 more yards before being stopped. They were within kicking range again. Stile decided not to gamble on another running play. He drop-kicked another field goal. The score was now 15-9, with 8 minutes remaining. At this rate, he could do it, provided he had no bad breaks. Unfortunately, he was overdue for one of those. He had been playing extremely chancy ball. Should he try another onside kick? No, that would only cost him yardage at this stage. He had to make the rifleman travel as far across the field as possible, so that he had maximum opportunity to make an error. So, Stile played it straight. This time, he managed to put the ball all the way into the end zone. The rifleman put it into play on the 20-yard line. This time, wary of passing into Stile's double coverage, he handed it off to his runner. But the android proceeded without imagination and was downed at the line of scrimmage. Any play left purely to the animals was basically wasted time. The capacities of the androids had evidently been crafted for that. The human players had to make their physical and/or mental skills count. Now Stile was sure the citizen was beginning to sweat. The rifleman knew that if he failed to move the ball, he would have to turn it over, and then Stile would find some devious way to score. A touchdown and extra point would put Stile ahead in the closing minutes. But the citizen was unable to advance the ball. What was he to do? What could he do? He risked another pass to his double-covered android receiver. It was perfectly placed, threading between the defenders to reach its target. How that man could pass! But one defender managed to tip it, and the receiver did not catch it cleanly. The ball squirted out of his grasp, bounced on the ground, and one of Stile's animals, not realizing the ball was dead, fell on it. It was obviously an incomplete pass, but the referee signaled a fumble. Now it was Stile's ball on the 32-yard line. "Now wait," Stile protested. "That's a miscall. The receiver never had control of the ball." "Aren't you aware that these referees are programmed to make at least one major miscall per game?" the rifleman called to him. "That's to emulate the original style of play, back on Crazy Earth. You happen to be the beneficiary of that error." The referees were robots, of course. Stile hadn't noticed. They could be set at any level of competence. "But that's not luck. That's luck, not skill." "There's an element of luck in most games. That lends a special fascination. The human species loves to gamble. Play before you draw another delay of game penalty." The rifleman did not seem upset, perhaps because his change of possession was obviously no fault of his own. Hastily, Stile played. He accepted the hiked ball, faded back for a pass, found his receivers covered, saw 3 huge animals bearing down on him, dodged them all, circled behind one, and safely overthrew his covered receiver. The moment he released the ball, he hunched over as though still carrying it. The turning android saw that and grabbed him, not having seen the ball go. The tackle was bruising despite the armor, but at least the padding protected him from more than superficial abrasion. A flag went down. Roughing the passer. 15-yard penalty, first down. Once again, Stile was within field goal range. He drop-kicked again, of course. The audience cheered. The stadium was almost full now. News of this game was evidently spreading. But he had to keep his attention on the field. Now he had 12 points and 6 minutes to go. Maybe he could pull it out after all. But the rifleman had the ball again, and now he was determined. There were not going to be any more breaks or mistakes. Stile's misgivings were well taken. The rifleman shot his passes too high and fast for Stile to intercept, settling for swift, short gains. When Stile tried too hard, he got tagged for interference. Slowly, erratically, but inevitably, the citizen hammered out the yardage. On Stile's 30-yard line, the rifleman's first pass attempt failed. On second down, his run got nowhere. On third down, Stile gambled on a blitz, sending 8 of his animals in to overrun the quarterback before he could pass. It worked. The rifleman was sacked. Loss of yards. Now it was fourth down, and the rifleman had to kick out. He tried a place kick and a field goal, but was too far out. The ball fell short, to Stile's immense relief. Stile had the ball again, with 4 minutes remaining. Time enough, if he could move the ball. He moved it. He had his animals open a hole in the center, and he slipped through for several yards. He had his passer send a screen pass to him, and he dodged and raced up the sideline for several more yards. He was wise to the ways of the androids now. He knew their little individual foibles. Some were faster than others, some less stupid. One android did not have the wit to outmaneuver another, but Stile did. He could get past them, so long as he did it himself, not delegating the job to an animal of his own. So long as he carried the ball himself, he could progress. That was the key. That was why the rifleman had succeeded so well in moving the ball at the outset, while Stile floundered. The rifleman had drawn on his own abilities, not limited by those of the androids. Now Stile was doing it too, and had been doing it every time he kicked. Now, so late in the game, understanding came. It really was a game of 2, not of 22. But this was bruising. The constant exertion and battering were taking it out of him, and Stile could not maintain the drive. It stalled out on the rifleman's 40-yard line. Too far for another field goal. Stile had to punt, regretfully. He went for the coffin corner, angling the ball out of bounds at the 4-yard line. That forced the rifleman to play in his own end zone. The citizen was showing overt nervousness now. He did not like being backed up this way. He tried a pass, but it was wobbly and off target, incomplete. Now it was time to strike. Stile caught the arm of his center as the lines reformed. "Make a hole to spring me through," he said, and the creatures nodded. The androids were slow thinkers, but they did orient somewhat on the needs of their supervisors. This one now understood what Stile wanted. When the ball was hiked, the android shouldered into his opposite number, lifting him entirely off the ground. Stile scooted through, so low that his flexing knees hurt, and emerged directly in front of the rifleman. "Oh no!" the rifleman exclaimed. Losing his poise, he tried to run from Stile instead of throwing the ball away. It was a mistake. He moved right into a pocket of white linemen and was downed in his own end zone. It was a safety. 2 points. The score was now 15-14, with 2 minutes left to play, and Stile's team would get the ball. It was put into play by a free kick from the rifleman's 20-yard line. The kicker, under no pressure from the opposing line, got off a booming spiral that lofted high and far. One of Stiles' receivers took it on his 30-yard line and ran it all of 2 yards before getting buried. Now Stile was highly conscious of the clock. He dared not give up the ball again, for the rifleman would surely consume the remaining time in a slow drive and win by a single point. But how could Stile move it down to field goal range against the desperation defense he knew he would encounter? Answer: he had to do it himself. He would get battered, but it was the only way. "Run interference for me," he told his three most competent animals. "You two in front, you behind. Right end run. You two receivers go out for a fake pass. And you runner, you fake a run to the left." He was pulling out all the stops. If the rifleman anticipated his strategy, he would swamp Stile with a blitz. It had to be risked. But the citizen, too, was tiring. He was in fit condition, but Stile was not merely fit. He was an excellent athlete in peak condition, strongly motivated. His toughness and endurance were counting more heavily now. The citizen stayed well back, avoiding physical contact when he could. In effect, he had dropped off his team. That meant that not only did Stile have 11 effective players to 10, but he had the most animated team. Now he could put together a sustained drive. Theoretically. His animals blocked and Stile ran around the end. And it worked. He made several yards before his escort fell in assorted tangles. Now a huge black android pounced on him for the kill, and Stile cut in under the brute and threw him with a solid shoulder boost. It was partly the disparity of size that enabled Stile to come in low, and partly surprise that put him in close instead of where the android expected him. The creature went tumbling across Stile's back and rolled to the turf. Suddenly, Stile was in the relative clear, and still on his feet. He accelerated forward, drawing on his reserves of energy, determined to make the most of his opportunity. Dimly, he heard the roar of the crowd, excited by the dramatic run. The stadium had been constantly filling, and now more than half the seats were filled, and it was a fair-sized chamber, sufficient for perhaps 1,000. Stile knew these spectators didn't care who won the game. They merely responded to the unfolding drama. Still, their applause encouraged him. His bruises and fatigue seemed to fade, and he shot ahead at full speed. 5 yards, 10, 15, 20. In the end, it was the rifleman who caught him. The man was not to be tricked by a martial arts throw. After all, he was a former tourney winner who had to be conversant with all forms of physical combat. He caught Stile by one arm and swung him around and down. He tried to wrest the ball away, but Stile was on guard against that, and plowed into the turf without giving it up. He was now on the rifleman's 45-yard line with a first down. His ploy had paid off handsomely. On the next play, Stile tried a short pass from android to android, while he himself faked another run. This was not as spectacularly successful as his last play, but it was good for 8 more yards. Most of the attention had been on Stile's fake, and the rifleman's pass defense had loosened up. Then a quarterback sneak, good for 3 more yards, and a first down on the 34-yard line. He was getting near field goal range, but now he had only 30 seconds remaining. With no timeouts, he had no time to spare for fancy planning. "Give me the ball," he said. "Protect me." But this time he got nowhere. His strategy had been too vague. 15 seconds remaining. Time for one final desperation measure. "Take a lateral," he told his primary pass receiver. "Step clear and lateral back to me." Stile took the hiked ball, stepped back, lateraled to his receiver, and shrugged at the onrushing tacklers as they struggled to avoid him. The rifleman didn't want any game penalties stopping the clock at this point. The android lateraled back. Stile stood alone, having been forgotten by the tacklers. As a pileup formed about the pass receiver, Stile dodged forward, passing confused androids of both teams who somehow thought the play had ended and were slow to reorient. He cut to the left, getting clear of the central glut, then forward again. He had made it to field goal range. Then he heard the final gun. He had used up all his time in the course of his maneuvering, and now the game was over. There would be no more plays. No chance to drop-kick the winning field goal. Stile slowed to a walk, disconsolate. So close, only to fail. To reach the 15-yard line in the clear and have to quit, defeated by a single point. Then, from the front tier of seats, he heard Sheen's voice. "Run, you idiot!" And he saw the animals of both teams converging on him. Suddenly, he realized that the game was not quite over. The play was still in session. Until he was tackled, it was not finished. But the rifleman, more alert to the situation than Stile had been, was now between him and the goal line. The citizen was calling directions to his troops. Stile knew he could not make it all the way. He began running across the field, toward the center, where more of his own animals were. "Protect me!" he bawled. Dully, they responded. They started blocking off the pursuit. Stile cut back toward the goal line, making it to the 10-yard line, the 5. A black android crashed through the interference and caught Stile from behind. Stile whomped down in a forward fall, and the ball squirted from his grasp. A fumble at the worst possible time. The androids knew what to do with a loose ball. Animals of both teams belly flopped to cover it. In a moment, the grandest pileup of the game developed. The whistle blew, ending the play and the game. The delirious cheering of the crowd abruptly stilled. Obviously, the ball had been recovered, but where and by whom? It was impossible to tell. Slowly, under the supervision of the referees, the androids were unpiled. The bottom one wore a white suit and lay just within the end zone. Stile had 6 more points. Now the crowd went absolutely crazy. Serfs and citizens alike charged onto the field.
"Let's get out of here before we're both trampled to death,"
the rifleman exclaimed, heading for the exit tunnel.
"Yes, sir,"
Stile agreed. "By the way, congratulations. It was an excellent game." "Thank you, sir." They drew up inside the tunnel. Here they were safe. The crowd was attacking the goalposts in some kind of insane tradition that went back before Planet Proton had been colonized. "I have not forgotten our private wager," the rifleman said. "You played fair and tough and made a remarkable game of it, and you prevailed. I shall be in touch with you at another time." "Thank you, sir," Stile said, unable to think of anything better. "Now, let's get out of these uniforms." "Yes, sir." Then Sheen was trotting toward them, her breasts bouncing handsomely. She was ready to assume control of Stile's remaining time in this frame. It would be several days before all of the round 1 matches cleared, since there were 512 of them. But Stile would not be able to linger long in Proton frame. He had to get back to Phaze and find out how to handle the Unicorn Herd Stallion in combat. Otherwise, his tenure in Phaze could become even shorter than his tenure in Proton. But Sheen was aware of all of this. She took him in tow, stripping him of his armor in literal and figurative fashion. Stile was able to tune out the contemporaneous proceedings. How good it was to have a friend like Sheen here, and one like Nasa there.